Luke Worsham joins us now from AtoZ Sports at Luke_Worsham, covering the Tennessee Titans on the Titans beat for the AtoZ guys. Luke, it's one of those things, I don't even know where you start. I know you wrote about this on AtoZ Sports, Nashville.com. There's no excuse for this loss. There's no excuse for it. Let's just start there.
Luke.
I suppose we're veering toward the denial and bargaining stages of grief where they were like, oh, but you see Julio and A.J. Brown didn't play. And, oh, well, if this had just happened and my thing is if I were a Titans fan, I wouldn't be trying to rationalize that and defend what happened yesterday. I'd just be really upset that my team lost to an 0-3 team that had scored 20 points in 3 games.
Yeah, yes. Before we get into everything that goes with this, once upon a time, Mike Vrabel was Riverboat Vrabel, going for everything in London and everywhere, no matter what country they were playing in. He went for it. And you always kind of, if you go back to your football fandom or your playing or your career or whatever level, and it seemed like yesterday that was one of those things of maybe you should kick the 2 points. You're a mess. You're beat up, you're injured, you're on the road, you have trouble in the red zone right now, and you manage to just get a touchdown. They're making big plays on defense. Their young quarterback seems to be figuring things out. You do have Derrick Henry. Why not try to end this thing, get on the plane, and fly home? They didn't do it, though.
Yeah, and he was asked about that this afternoon, and he said that he didn't really think about it. I remember watching on the TV yesterday, his hand sort of immediately shot up with a 1 after they scored the touchdown. To be honest with Mickey, when you started that question, I thought you were going to talk about kicking for the tie, which is also a very strange situation. I can't say I blame him because it was 4th and 15 from the 40 with 19 seconds left. I don't really know what you're going to do with that.
Right.
But, yeah, I feel like over and over again we see from Vrabel him not being aggressive. And I don't know what the analytics say about that 2-point conversion, whether you should go for it or not. I do know this. More often than not, when they run that zone read from the shotgun with Tannehill and Henry on the 2-yard line, one of them's getting in.
Yeah. Luke Worsham, our guest, covers the Titans for AtoZ Sports, joins us now on Blaine and Mickey.
Well, Luke, how concerned are you from this point on? I know it's a loss. It's a huge loss in all our minds. But how concerned are you with the pass protection? Because the run game still seems to be there and very productive, but the total opposite in the pass game. Granted, now the Jets' D-line are the real deal, but still 7 sacks. And they didn't make any adjustments. I didn't see any chipping or keeping tight ends in on a regular basis at all.
Yeah, there was only one thing that worked for the Titans on offense yesterday other than Derrick Henry in the ground game, and that was those outlet screen passes to Jeremy McNichols. And that's why they ran that so much. I had so many people on Twitter being like, well, why do they keep calling these screen passes? I'm like, because Todd Downing sees that that's the only thing that's working. And, well, obviously this is where the A.J. Brown, Julio Jones thing does come into play, because obviously if they're in there, you would expect the passing game to be infinitely more productive. But it is concerning that they weren't able to do anything other than swing passes and screens to the backup running back. And like you said, a lot of that had to do with the pass protection, which Vrabel said today, the 7 sacks were kind of because of everything. Bad protection, not identifying the coverage in a way that would allow them to put themselves in a good protection scenario with the protection call. He also said there were times that Tannehill was not getting rid of the ball soon enough. And I followed up on that and said, were there times where Tannehill wasn't stepping up when he should have or climbing the pocket? And Vrabel said, well, it's kind of hard to climb the pocket when you climb forward and just run into someone else. Right. So kind of everything went wrong, really, in the passing game.
Well, to add to that, though, Luke, is why didn't they attempt to move the pocket? I mean, you go watch. All you got to do is just watch the Jets and what they were doing and say, well, oh, man, we need to get outside the pocket and slow this pass rush down. Make them say, slow down a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like it was definitely rife for an opportunity for a boot or two, and we never really saw that. Because Derrick Henry was working. Derrick Henry's always going to work. I'm convinced that even if it was Woodside out there, that Derrick Henry would still work. but with Tannehill, because Henry's working, you can run those boots, and they're going to have to respect Derrick Henry on that other side. And like you said, you move the pocket with Ryan Tannehill to the opposite action of where the play fake went, and maybe you get him a chance to step into a throw and go downfield, which they never really did yesterday.
All right, now I'm going to ask you some question about the defense. We're with Luke Worsham, AtoZ Sports, and that is, I saw no disguise in their defense to try to trick and get them to throw them one for a rookie quarterback. They just try to straight up, and the only weapon they really had that could beat them was Corey Davis, and they also didn't even double them.
Yeah. Well, my big takeaway from the defense was the cushion that was consistently given up. And I had some banter with Vrabel about that today. And, some people are talking about, well, they ran a lot of bunch out of trips, which when you run bunch, when those three receivers are all together, it is hard. You can't press all three of them. You'll get picked to death. But there were plenty of times where the Jets spread the ball out, and I'm looking at one right now, 3rd down and 3. In overtime, ball at the Titans' 21-yard line. The Jets are going 4 wide, it looks like, and Janoris Jenkins is standing 8 yards away from the line of scrimmage on 3rd and 3. Like, Blaine as a safety, does that not just drive you insane?
Oh, man, I would have been livid. I might have called timeout, and then they would have cussed me out when I got to the sideline. Like, what are you doing? I was like, I don't think the guys like that call.
And I asked Vrabel, because I posted something with that picture and with other stuff about, and Vrabel saying about a month ago that, well, we don't coach our players to back up in a spread against a spread offense on 3rd and short. And he's like, well, you guys will just use anything I say to and I'm like, okay, so what about that play? And he said, well, I'm going to tell Janoris Jenkins that he doesn't need to be 15 yards off the ball on 3rd and 3. And so I'm like, okay. That makes sense. And I don't know why this keeps happening, because when you talk to the players, and Blaine, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but every time I've asked a player, I've asked Jenkins, I've asked Fulton, they always say, well, it's up to us on a given play, how much cushion. It's like, what's happening? Like, why are they doing this? Are they, like, unconfident? I don't know what's happening.
Well, I would say sometimes some players are very unaware of the actual situation. When I say that, it's just 3rd and 3, and they're like, oh, they just line up. Oh, I'm lining up 7, 8 yards deep. This is what I do when I play off technique. No, I think you need to challenge them, or you need to change up what you're doing, because it's 3rd and 3. You're going to go pitch and catch right there. Yeah, see, but some players aren't aware of the situation that's going on in the game. They play it as though they're robots, because that's where they're at mentally.
And there was also a play, and it was one of the deep shots, and it was an off-schedule place, and I'm not really sure what happened deep downfield in the secondary, but the ball snapped. It was 3rd down and 6. And Janoris Jenkins, I don't know if he saw something on tape or what, but the ball snapped, and he just immediately starts taking off toward the end zone. They're playing scared, which is very strange, because I always thought, especially last year, that maybe they were just worried about not having talent. I mean, it's hard for, what was his name? Jonathan Joseph, for example, to keep up playing press coverage. But they've got talent at corner now. Fulton's playing out of his mind. Jenkins has done okay. You've got the Chris Jackson. These guys aren't slow, so I don't know what's going on there.
Well, with Luke Worsham of AtoZ Sports.
Luke, you mentioned Fulton playing out of his mind. He's also playing out of position yesterday. They stuck him in the slot, which all of us are like, this dude said last year, hey, man, this is not I really have to learn how to do this. There's things I'm trying to learn. Then you stick him outside, and he's thriving. So Chris Jackson gets hurt. And who do they put back in the slot? But Christian Fulton. So they mess up 2 positions. They move him off the position where he does well and put him in a position where he is, admittedly had to really do some thinking to be there.
Yeah, and Vrabel was asked about that today, and his answer was sort of, we made that decision because we thought it was best for the team. The answer you would expect him to give. And then about Molden, who played in the slot for the first 2 games, said, we'll look to increase his role. I don't remember what exactly he said, but Yeah, very strange, because at that point you're affecting two positions.
Yeah.
But also, like, Fulton has been so outstanding on the perimeter, and Molden is by his nature a slot corner who I would think matches up fairly well with Jamison Crowder, who's more of a shifty guy than a downfield speed guy.
And that's like, there's a lot of stuff to peel after the trip to the Big Apple here. So you bring up Molden. He didn't play one snap on defense yesterday. Dylan Radins was in sweatpants. Caleb Farley has now a shoulder, not the back that he got here with. This is the second year in a row where you're getting nothing from your draft class. And Luke, some jackal, I tweeted about this a couple days ago, and somebody's like, you don't need those guys. Well, yes, you did. You could have used a tackle yesterday, and you could have used two cornerbacks yesterday. And
you could have used the fourth-round wide receiver, right?
Yeah, you could have used him too, but you didn't have any of those guys. So, yes, you needed them yesterday, and you're going to need some of those guys to do something for the future, or eventually this team is just going to wear itself out.
Yeah, and you guys got into this a little bit at the tail end of the Countdown to Kickoff show yesterday. I was able to catch some of that on my way in to do the AtoZ show. I think there was a caller that asked about John Robinson, and you two and Kevin started talking about, like, is there a disconnect between Vrabel and Robinson? And I don't think we have enough evidence to start pouncing on that and talk about people need to get fired and there needs to be some kind of realignment. Like, that kind of thing is nonsense. But there's certainly a pattern emerging of these guys get drafted, and option A is they're just not very good, and John Robinson's not drafting good players. And option B is Vrabel doesn't like the players that he's given. I don't know what's happening, but you can't deny that there is a pattern emerging here where these rookies are really not being asked to do anything. And it's also not like there's a whole lot of hope for the future in some cases. I mean, go back to the 2020 draft class. We don't need to talk about the lazy panda, but other than Fulton, who are we expecting to come in and do anything from that draft class? Murchison's a sub-package guy. I guess you're getting something out of him, but Darrington Evans has had a really rough go of it. And then you move forward this year, who's the rookie that's going to help this team win games in 2021?
Luke Worsham helping us out right now, talking Titans. He's with AtoZ Sports. He's with us now on Blaine and Mickey.
Well, Luke, I guess what is worse, the Bengals lost last year or this Jets loss this year? And tell me why.
This one. Okay, because I got asked about this all throughout the week because I was fairly confident. I kept saying, I trust Vrabel. He's going to have his team ready to play against an 0-3 team. And everyone was like, well, what about the Bengals game last year? And I just think that Bengals team was a little more talented, maybe not a whole heck of a lot more talented, but Joe Burrow, I think, did better in that game than we maybe expected Zach Wilson to do. But I think this one is worse, perhaps because of the missed opportunity, because the Titans were blessed with, after their 1-1 start to the season, the one win coming against a really tough Seattle team, you get the Colts with a crippled quarterback, and then you get the 0-3 Jets, and then next week you get the Jacksonville Jaguars, who I'm sure will be very focused this week because their head coach has really set a good precedent in that department. But they had a chance to go into that Buffalo Monday night game 4-1, and now at best it's going to be 3-2. And I had someone tweet me yesterday and say, we're going to look back in week 18 and say, well, if they had just won that Jets game, then they may have been seeded higher or hosted an extra playoff game. And look, I think they're going to win the division just because there's not a whole heck of a lot of competition coming out of the AFC South. But they're going to look back on that Jets game at the end of the season. I think we can say that and regret what happened yesterday in the Meadowlands.
So your belief, Luke, is that this team is still a playoff team, but not a Super Bowl contending type team.
It's weird because I am fully confident that you could put the Titans against any team in the NFL and they'd have a chance to win. I think that's how talented they are. I think Vrabel's a good coach. You put them against the Bills, the Bucks, the Packers, any of these teams that we talk about as being the best in the NFL, I think the Titans can go toe for toe with them. But then also they might lose to the Jets and they might lose to the Jaguars. Like, it's very strange. And I will say this, too. I think this team is almost addicted to adversity because we're going to hear it on Wednesday and Thursday. We're going to hear the players talking about, no one believes in us. Everyone's counting us out. We got to go in there and rise above. And it's like, in those situations, they're really good. But when they don't have that to play off of, they're not quite as good. I go back to the playoff run, right? They were not favored in any of those games against New England, against Baltimore, and they went in and won because they were able to play against that adversity. Favored against Baltimore in the wild card round in 2020, they lay a giant egg and went one and done. And I think that's becoming a real problem.
I have to get your expertise here, Luke, and that is Reynolds had a chance to make some spectacular catches, and two of them I thought, maybe our superstars might have made those, but he didn't. What did you think of his performance in Reynolds? And did you consider those drops, even though he got both of his paws on them?
Not so much the first one. That would have been a circus catch. I did think that was an opportunity for him to really make a play and do something because he has been a healthy scratch and he needed something to put on tape and give this coaching staff some confidence in him to keep putting him out there. But there were a lot of times where he did get open for Tannehill. It's a very strange situation, the whole Josh Reynolds thing, because back in, April, we would have all said wide receiver 2 Josh Reynolds before the Julio trade. And then after the Julio trade, we said wide receiver 3 Josh Reynolds. Now it's like wide receiver 6 Josh Reynolds. and so I do think he missed some opportunities. Sure, it was a tough play, that first one. And the downfield throw, the one where he kind of got nicked up on, I do think he should have been able to come up with that one. Those are two opportunities. He was open, right? He did the hard part. He made the right moves and he got himself open, but he didn't finish the play. And if he had, I think, one, the Titans might have won, but two, we'd be sitting here going, okay, so now they're going to get Julio back and now they're going to get AJ back and they have this third option. But instead, we're still talking about Josh Reynolds as someone who may be a healthy scratch again when the two big dogs get back.
Or should we be talking about Mickey Ryan's favorite player that is no longer with the Titans, that plays receiver? He had a 100-yard day yesterday. Khalif Raymond. Yes, he
really?
did, for the Lions.
Tiny Khalif.
Yeah.
They need some speed, that's for sure, because I tend to think Cameron Batson isn't as fast as we give him credit for. I think he's more of one of those shifty lateral agility guys. I don't think he has the straight line speed, certainly, that Khalif does.
Yep, would concur. I guess lastly for me, Luke, and that is the O-line getting to a point where you feel like it's aging in because they're getting hurt almost every other game, or every game so far, really. Somebody's gone down. I know they've come back, but, man, this early in the season, it makes me a little nervous Purvis. What about you?
Yeah, if you count the play where David Quesenberry got poked in the eye against the Colts and had to miss a play, everyone but Nate Davis has been injured at some point already this season. Now, obviously, you don't count the getting poked in the eye, but it does seem like at least once every other drive they got to pause the game to tend to one of the offensive linemen. And I don't know. I think Saffold's playing pretty well. I think Jones is playing okay, but the shuffling is bound to catch up with them at some point because I'm all about next man up and we'll find 22 and put them out there. But, at a certain point, it's just got to be chaos for Ryan Tannehill and for Ben Jones as the guy who sets the protection calls, trying to figure out, because at a certain point, you can't help everyone. Everyone loves to talk about, well, you'll put this guy out there and, you can play David Quesenberry at right tackle. You just got to help him. Well, if you got to help everybody, you can't really help anybody. And it's becoming a problem. And like I said earlier, Tannehill didn't have much of a chance on a lot of those because there was nowhere to climb the pocket. There was no pocket to climb.
Luke Worsham, and again, I'm just sitting here and I'm looking at my notes, and we're talking about, they just don't have enough tackles. And they literally drafted a first round and a second round tackle in the last two drafts, and one was in sweatpants. Well, they were both in sweatpants yesterday, but for two different teams. They're even trying to address the problem and failing. At some point, though, Luke, I think they're going to have to look at Molden and go, just go play. And they're going to have to tell Radens, hey, you're active today. And if one of these dudes gets poked in the eye or punched in the groin or whatever, you got to go out there and play. So just get yourself mentally ready.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. And it, especially with Molden and Radens, like David Quisenberry wasn't very good yesterday. I think you can probably do – it'd be hard to do worse than what they got yesterday. And I think you're right. They just got to be willing to pull the trigger on these guys. If bad things happen, bad things happen. But I don't know. Like, one argument that people will make is, well, if they play poorly and then you have to take them out, it's a confidence issue at that point. I don't know that I buy that so much because I look around the NFL, and for the most part, teams draft players and then play those players. There's no, like, sitting around and waiting, you know?
Well, Luke, we didn't have to sit around and wait for you today, man. Great stuff, as always, at Luke. Mike Vrabel reads your Twitter. He said so today in the press conference.
Apparently so, which is both flattering and frightening.
So
what part did he say he acknowledged that he read? Did he say?
Luke talking about the DBs playing off the receivers. He goes, so I saw your Twitter when you tweeted about that. So follow the guy on Twitter who Mike Vrabel follows, Luke Worsham, at Luke_Worsham, right there. You should put in your bio, followed by Mike Vrabel. Or read by Mike Vrabel. He doesn't
read
follow
by Mike Vrabel. Yeah, he definitely doesn't follow me. He's a little more sneaky than that.
Luke, good stuff, man. AtoZ Sports Nashville.com. People can read all your writing there and on Twitter, too. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Luke Worsham, I had a couple of people try to call in while Luke was on. We can take calls in the next segment or the segment after that or really any time. We don't have any more guests today, so you can be our guest. We also have Ding Dong of the Week coming up in, about 30 minutes or so. This is Blaine and Mickey 104.5 The Zone.